The morning sun poured through the towering glass windows of First Heritage Bank in Montgomery, Alabama, 2018, casting golden streaks across polished marble floors. The lobby buzzed with restless energy. Businessmen in crisp suits tapped phones, women in heels shuffled papers, all glancing at the ornate wall clock. Amid this polished chaos, Mr. Ezekiel Harlan stepped inside, a figure starkly out of place. At 73, his weathered face, framed by a gray beard, bore the lines of a life hard-lived. His faded checkered shirt, patched jeans, and worn straw hat drew curious stares. Clutching a cracked leather wallet in calloused hands, he moved slowly, his quiet dignity a contrast to the room's frenetic pulse. Whispers followed him, eyes judging his tattered appearance. But Ezekiel had endured such looks for decades. This wasn't his first time in a bank. His bank, but the weight of disdain always stung. Wealthy clients sneered. Tellers avoided his gaze, their pity or judgment as familiar as the ache in his joints. Ezekiel had built First Heritage from a single desk in a dusty office, his fortune earned through sweat and sacrifice, yet he chose humility over flash. Today, he came to check his account balance, a routine act to ensure his empire ran smoothly. He stood in line, ignoring the stares, his straw hat shielding eyes that had seen more than anyone guessed. Victor Morrow, the 35-year-old branch manager, strutted from his glass office, his dark blue suit immaculate, red tie a bold accent. Young, handsome, and drunk on power, Victor thrived on appearances, dismissing those he deemed beneath him. Spotting Ezekiel, he nudged a clerk, whispering with a smirk. Then, loud enough for the lobby to hear, he jeered. "If you've got a balance worth checking, old man, I'll double it myself." Laughter rippled, conversations paused, and eyes fixed on Ezekiel. His shoulders sagged, but his face remained calm, a quiet strength holding him steady. He'd faced mockery before. Men like Victor saw only the worn clothes, not the empire behind them. What Victor didn't know, what none in the room knew, was that Ezekiel Harlan wasn't just a customer. He was the silent CEO of First Heritage, the man who'd built a banking empire from nothing, owning not just this branch, but the entire chain. His wealth could buy the building 10 times over, yet he lived simply, his humility a choice, not a necessity. The lobby's judgment was a mirror of their ignorance, and Ezekiel let it pass, his focus on the task at hand. The clerk, still chuckling from Victor's jab, called Ezekiel forward, his tone laced with amusement. Ezekiel handed over his ID, weathered hands steady, and waited. The clerk typed, his smirk fading as the screen lit up with a balance that stretched into 9 figures. His eyes widened, his jaw tightened, and he leaned closer, as if the numbers were a mirage. "Sir, your account," he stammered, glancing nervously at Victor, who was watching with a grin. Sensing hesitation, Victor strode over, snatching the printed slip. "What? He's got a few bucks?" he mocked, then froze. The paper trembled in his hands, his face paling as the zeros sank in. Ezekiel Harlan wasn't just wealthy. He was the bank's owner, the man who signed Victor's paychecks. The lobby fell silent, the hum of activity replaced by a heavy hush. Customers leaned forward, whispering, while tellers exchanged nervous glances. Ezekiel retrieved the slip, folded it carefully, and tucked it into his wallet. His voice, low and steady, cut through the tension. "The real balance," he said, looking at Victor, "is in how we treat those we don't understand." His words landed like a gavel, their quiet power echoing in the marble hall. Victor's chest tightened, his arrogance dissolving, his face burning with shame. The laughter he'd wielded as a weapon now mocked him, reflected in the eyes of customers who'd once admired his charm. Ezekiel turned to leave, his slow steps deliberate, but he paused at the door, his straw hat casting a shadow. Turning to the lobby, he spoke, his voice warm yet commanding. "I grew up with nothing, dirt floors, empty stomachs. Every dollar I earned came from work, not pride. I built this bank to lift people up, to give families hope, workers dreams, communities strength. If you see someone worn or weary, don't judge. You don't know their storms. Treat them with the dignity you'd beg for yourself." The room stilled, the ticking clock pausing as if time itself listened. A young mother in line wiped tears. An older man nodded, hand over heart. The air shifted, heavy with introspection. Victor stood rooted, his polished facade cracked. Pride battled shame, but the truth was undeniable. He'd mocked the man who held his career in his hands. Ezekiel's words weren't just a rebuke, they were a mirror, forcing Victor to see his cruelty. As Ezekiel stepped into the sunlight, the lobby exhaled, whispers spreading like wildfire. By evening, the story reached the corporate board. Days later, Victor faced them in a sleek conference room. Ezekiel at the head, no longer in his straw hat but a simple suit, his humility unshaken. "Leadership isn't loudness," Ezekiel said, his gaze steady. "It's kindness to the smallest voice in the room." Victor resigned, his career undone by his own arrogance. The bank changed after that day. Tellers greeted every customer with respect, remembering Ezekiel's lesson. Customers shared the story, a legend of the man in the straw hat who'd humbled a king. Ezekiel continued his quiet life, tending his small garden, driving his old truck. His wealth a tool, not a crown. The board pushed for reforms, training on empathy, policies to prioritize service over status. Years later, the tale of Ezekiel Harlan lived on, not just as a CEO in disguise, but as a reminder: true wealth is character, not cash. In a sunlit lobby, an old man had rewritten the rules, proving dignity outshines all.